Grab your rods and tackle box, folks, as we dive into the wild world of fishing. Get ready for some laughs, some fish stories, and a touch of chaos as we wade into the deep waters of fishing wisdom. Our guides on this trip are a know-it-all, a guy who desperately needs a haircut, and a man named Sam. In this podcast, this motley crew shares their knowledge, their latest fishing antics, and probably get into more trouble than they bargained for. It's a podcast as unpredictable as the sport of fishing. If you love fishing, then this is the place to be, because in this podcast, every catch is a big one. Every story is a keeper, and the only thing more legendary than the tales is the trio delivering them. Welcome to the Bait Tank.
Welcome in, everybody, to the Bait Tank. This is episode 6. We're talking about springtime carp fishing and about drift fishing creeks and small streams and rivers. Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Having a lovely Saturday evening. We're going to say hello to some people quite quick. We have Mrs. Yak, who said she was first. Welcome in. Uncle Don R. 351 Cleveland. Travis Young. Big Food Tank, my buddy Eddie up there in Cleveland. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic. Thanks for coming in and checking us out. Like I said, this is episode 6 of the Bait Tank video podcast, and we are talking about springtime carp fishing and drift fishing, small creeks, rivers, and streams. As usual, I have my co-hosts. Got Sam over here to my left, and then I have Zach also in the background, who does not have a camera tonight because he lost his tripod. Boo, Zach, on losing the tripod. However, oh, there he is.
Whoops.
There he is. He's here. No tripod, so yeah, he's just being audio only. But
Yeah.
it is all good. Like I said, we are here. We're talking about fishing. We love fishing, and we're going to get this thing started right. So, anybody here in chat been carp fishing before? If so, put in the chat. I want to hear biggest carp fish you ever caught, whether it be a buffalo, whether it be a common carp, whether it be a mirror carp, even an Asian carp. I want to know what your biggest one you ever caught was and what you were using for bait. So, let us know in the chat. We do want to hear it, and we will definitely get this party started. So, Zach, Sam, springtime carp fishing. I know we've talked about it a little bit, you guys. And what is springtime carp fishing to you guys?
Frustration.
And why is that?
Considering I have targeted carp for 2 years and still have not caught one.
So there we go. All right, and then Sam has yet to say anything, so I'm feeling he's probably in the same line of work here as Zach.
Carp fishing here is like I've never seen. Like I've literally have never seen it. And the springtime salmon are running, so it's big.
Definitely not something that you hear about all the time. That's for sure. Now, I will say you live in Michigan, Sam, and there's actually a very, very large population of people that fish and target for carp in Michigan. I hear about it all the time. A lot of my Facebook groups that I'm in for carp fishing have a lot of Michigan anglers on there. So it's definitely something that is seen, maybe not completely unheard of, but it's definitely something that is seen quite often up there.
Oh, yeah, they're there. Like you can see, like they get so close you can pet them if you wanted to, but
you never caught one.
Hard. No, I've caught some. I've just never targeted them.
Okay.
Scariest time I've ever had, I was fishing at a dam for bluegill of all things, so I'm running 6-pound test. Yeah, that was.
Can you finish your story? Yeah. How big was that one? Or did you lose it?
No, I actually brought it up. It took me like 45 minutes because I was running 6-pound test. It was 29 pounds. So
I got you, man.
Am I the only one out of us 3 that has never caught one?
That is what it sounds like, sir. That is what it sounds like. So if you guys have been following the Extra Outdoors for any length of time, you guys do know I do enjoy carp fishing. I've been doing it for several years now. And unlike Sam, I've caught several. And unlike Zach, I've caught way more than Zach. Let's just put it that way. So it's definitely different, right? I mean, it's a species of fish that a lot of people consider to be a trash fish for various reasons. I mean, I'm not saying that they're right or wrong. That's an opinion you have to establish for yourself. Different states have different rules and regulations on them, and it varies from species to species too. Like I'm specifically referring to buffalo carp and common carp, which actually aren't related at all. One being the American one, native species, and the other one being the one that was brought over from Europe as a food source back in the 1800s. So they're considered naturalized. They've been in most of the freshwater ecosystem in the United States long enough that nature has accepted them the way they are, and it's not considered an invasive species anymore, which makes it really weird. But yes, it is considered a trash fish by a lot of people, and so there's some common misconceptions, I would say, when it comes to fishing for carp. But then there's also the whole negative aspect of it, where people are just like, shut it down, kill them all, all that good stuff, which I'm not into. Most of us here aren't into. A lot of us are catch and release fishermen, but for those who do eat fish, carp are supposedly really good eating. I've never had one. My grandfather used to have them a lot smoked as a kid. The only thing he ever said was that they're really bony. And anybody I know that uses them for bait also says they're very bony, and it can be hard to cut them off for bait too. So
I've used them for bait before from some of the bow fishermen around here, and they are very bony.
that is
Never
another thing
caught
too.
anything.
But say we're not going to talk about bow fishing so much in this episode. I do know it's a very common target for bow fishermen, especially in areas where they're overpopulated for sure, especially more out west and in the Midwest and like deep south. Those areas in particular, bow fishing is extremely popular, and those buffalo and Asian carp are all super popular species for that type of fishing. But yeah, so like I said, today we're talking about rod and reel fishing. We rephrase rod and reel fishing for carp and buffalo in springtime. So they act similar, even though they're not related. Like I said, the carp is actually more closely related to a minnow than it is to a lot of like the buffalo and stuff, whereas the buffalo is actually more closely related to a sucker than it is the carp. So, like I said, they're completely different species, but they act very similar. Considered to be grazers, prefer vegetation for areas to live in, whatnot, and they have these patterns that a lot of them follow. They do school, especially in big giant shoals in bigger bodies of water. And we're coming into spring. Their behaviors are going to change. If you're fishing for them in the winter, you're typically going to be looking for deeper holes, outside river bends, heavy structure near holes, or in deeper water that'll hold these large schools of fish that literally will just sit there. And you can, if you find a hole of them, you can catch fish after fish after fish, and that's the strategy in the winter. But in the spring, they go mobile. They're getting close to thinking about spawning. They're going to be going to different areas of water, typically shallower water. They're going to start doing their thing. They're start moving in droves into these areas to consider spawning. But which kind of brings us to our first thing. So, I mean, the biggest thing when it comes to influencing what carp do in the spring, just like any other species of fish in fresh water, is going to be water temperature. These fish, they spawn somewhere around 55 degrees is like their sweet spot for spawning. Depending on what area of the country you're in, they spawn more than once a year, but spring's the first one of the year that they spawn in. And in my experience during that time, you don't catch them. If they are spawning, you are not going to catch them. They're too busy doing their thing. But right before the spawn and right after the spawn, right when they're fattening up to get ready for the spawn, getting eggs in, all that good stuff, and right after when they've already finished their business and they're going back to their regular lives, you can catch an absolute ton of them. We're going to talk about some of those ways you can do that today.
I'm gonna learn today.
Yes, you're going to learn something today, Zach. Sam, obviously you know a little bit. You've seen them because, like you said, you do a lot of salmon fishing and stuff like that in the spring. So you have seen them. They are shallow. Same spots as the salmon for the most part. Salmon are probably in the main current, but the carp are going to be on the side current. In the slack water.
Yeah, they're shallower. They eat spawn and basically, yeah, what the salmon leave, they eat up.
Exactly.
So you do see them as just that's not what we're going after, and that's other than that one that I told you about at the dam. That's how I caught. So I've hooked into 6, and I caught 5.
Nice.
And that's how I caught all of mine was during salmon fishing.
I got you. And Uncle Don brings up a good point. Common carp were planted here by the government in the 1930s because of their fear of famine. They were actually brought in before that, but yes, they were heavily brought in more so during that time frame. But then also specifically where he's at, they are considered invasive because they destroy the habitats for other fish fry. That is true. I cannot deny that. They muddy up the water shallow, which a lot of other species of fish are going to be out there doing that. And obviously, we talked about before in previous episodes, if you're dealing with fish that spawn, especially in shallow water or in lakes where the water is not moving, getting dirt and silt on those eggs is absolutely detrimental to the spawning of those other species. And so it's definitely a thing that can happen. Carp are not the only culprits for that, but they are definitely one of the bigger culprits for it because of how much commotion and action they do in shallow water during their process. So I definitely cannot argue that at all. But again, they are hard fighting fish. They can get very big. The world record's over 100 pounds. The United States record's 54 pounds and something ounces, I think, if I remember correctly. So I mean, they can definitely get big. They're plentiful. There's tons of them out there. People are bow fishing them by the 55-gallon drum and not putting any kind of dent in the population. They can be really great for catfishing. People do that too. And then, like I said, for me, they're really hard fighting fish. I like to catch, and they get big. What were you saying, Zach? I didn't mean to interrupt you, buddy.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I kind of interrupted you there. Bow fishing's the main fishing they do for them here.
Right.
I'm the only one I've ever seen try to catch them on purpose with rod and reel. You notice how I said try.
I got it. Yeah, but it's definitely a conversation starter for sure. I mean, I'll be sitting there on the riverbank, got my 3 rods out, and I do use the bite alarm, so that always gets attention too. When they start beeping and going off, you want to know what's going on. I mean, like I said, they're not. It's just a tool, just like anything else for those bite alarms. It's not something that everybody has, but it is something anybody can use. And like I said, it is a tool. Anybody can get it. Anybody can use it, and it's great for other species of fish too. I've used them for catfishing. I've used them for bluegill fishing, sucker fishing. I mean, all that good stuff. I mean, it's just another form of bite detection. No different than a bell or tying a tin can to your line that drops off when the line gets tight. I mean, it's all the same kind of thing. But yeah, so like I said, 55 degrees, that's when they start trying to spawn and consider going shallow. But the areas they go in, like I said, in the winter, they're up in these deeper holes in the winter. They're trying to stay safe, stay shoaled up, stay kind of dormant. They go to these areas where the current's not going to be as strong, or in the lakes, just out in deeper water in general. They're literally just sitting there on the bottom waiting for spring to show up. They don't always eat, but if you can get them to eat, you're usually doing pretty good. For those who are familiar with the concept of chumming, you don't really chum in the winter. You might use a pack bait still, maybe, especially if you do find a school of them, because then you can get a bunch of them going in that hole at once. But the more popular strategy in the winter is to use these single baits just out and about. And a lot of people do use those bright colored pop-ups or bright colored boilies, which are basically a boiled dough ball for anybody not knowing what that term is. And the idea is that you're using that sight and that really strong scent of that one object to hopefully catch one as it's swimming by. In the spring, that goes out the window. I mean, if you have a single bait out there, yeah, you're probably going to get hit by it, but you are completely ignoring a very large opportunity, which is chumming or pre-baiting for these fish. And granted, this is completely based on where you live. If you can't chum, then I don't recommend doing it, because obviously you get in trouble, get fines, all that good stuff. In other states where chumming is not legal, if the wording of the chum says a legal bait is something that's on your hook, well, if you're using any kind of dough or paste bait, such as pack bait, if your hook is in that wad of stuff at the end of your line, even though your sinker's in it too, it is still legal. And granted, that is a loose interpretation. Your DNR officers, environmental officers might say otherwise, so you need to ask them to be sure. But I do know in a lot of places how people get away with it because they're using that pack bait and their hook is in it. In places like Tennessee, where you're allowed to pre-bait and chum, go to town with it. If you're fishing a river, fishing a creek, or fishing a really large reservoir, a really large lake, the more the merrier. Obviously, if you're fishing a smaller lake, you don't want to dump so much you're feeding the whole entire lake, but you do want to feed enough that you can bring fish into that area and keep them coming back to visit. For those who don't know, carp can be trained. There's several videos out there about it. One in particular is by a guy called Luke Nichols from Catfish and Carp, the YouTube channel. He does a video where he literally pre-fishes or pre-baits for a week, and he fishes every single day. But over that course of time, every single day, he gets there and the carp are already there. There's some splashing, there's some showing up, there's bubbles. Like he spooked someone, he's throwing more bait in. I mean, they literally know, hey, there's food there at such and such time. I'll be back there. And the interesting part of that experiment is the longer he does it, the more days he does it, the bigger the fish get on average. Might be less bites, but the bigger fish, which has been proven multiple times by multiple people that's normally the case. And I can say from my experience that it is the same also. That the longer I pre-bait an area, the more I pre-bait it, I should say, the bigger the fish tend to be eventually. But there's several different strategies for it. Like I said, you can use boiled feed corn, you can use boiled birdseed, peanuts, sweet feed, range cubes, cattle cubes. I mean, all this crazy stuff, birdseed blocks. I mean, I've seen people use all kinds of crazy stuff for them. And then, like I said, you got the dough baits, the paste baits. I've seen people catch them on crawfish. I've seen people catch them on clams and oysters and stuff. I mean, those are all things those fish are going for. You know, they're grazing through there, finding these oyster beds and shell beds and chewing on that and eating grass and tubers and all that stuff on the bottom too. I mean, they are omnivorous. I will also say though that it's quite common, especially up north in the Great Lakes, people that are out there jigging with spoons for salmon and stuff to hook into carp. Because up there they do change once they get to a certain size. They have so much protein in order to keep up the energy in their bodies, just like any other fish. So a lot of those fish will end up shifting over to chasing bait fish, or at least following the bait fish schools and eating the shad that are dying out of or shad, alewives, all that stuff that die out of there too. So it's not uncommon to see carp caught on jigging spoons, and that goes for buffalo too. I mean, I've caught more buffalo on jigging spoons than while I'm fishing for striped bass than I have on rod and reel with that corn or whatever. It's pretty crazy how aggressive they can be.
No, I have caught a buffalo.
I know you have. You sent me a picture of that one. You caught it down there at Meow Mix, if I remember correctly. Which, I mean, that just goes back to, fish being where the food's at. If you're next to a factory on the river that dumps grain into the river nonstop, then obviously you're gonna have fish there, So it doesn't surprise me at all.
Caught it on Meow Mix?
Not necessarily on the food itself, but he was fishing that the plant was right there on the river, right there. And
okay, gotcha.
So
I thought he was using Meow Mix as food. I was like, wow.
People do it. Maybe not Meow Mix, but I know it's quite common over in Europe to use dog food because it floats. Which we'll get into the tactics here in a little bit, but I mean it's one of the more popular ways to catch them in the springtime when they're shallow is using floating baits like that, bread, stuff like that.
I love fish. You spend hundreds of dollars on tackle, hundreds of dollars on reels, rods, and you use bread or corn or I've caught fish on a hot dog before. So like a 25-cent bait?
Yeah. Yeah, it goes back to another video I did forever ago about how cheap fishing could be to get into. It literally boils. It's so skewed. You could be spending, like you said, tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars on fishing gear. People mortgage refinancing their house to buy boats. I mean, stuff like that. And a kid with a can of corn goes and out fishes them. It can happen. It does not have to be expensive, but it is pretty crazy how different it could be for people, for sure.
I'm also sorry if you randomly hear snoring in the background. My puppy just fell asleep, so
That's all right. I mean, the big old bear there. I mean, St. Bernard. I mean, they're going to be noisy
compared to my little puppy.
Yeah. Just more people in the house. Mike Sampson, welcome in. Cavish Fever and Outdoors, welcome in. Let's see. Lisa is in here now. Welcome in. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic. Thanks for stopping by. We are currently talking about springtime carp fishing for the first half of the show. And the second half, we're going to be talking about drift fishing, creeks, rivers, and small streams from the bank.
I don't know. One of the kids ate the Reese's one. And
first, we're going to listen on Amanda's conversation.
I'm learning lots. So
just kidding. All right. So key areas for carp fishing. So like I said, we talk about them going shallow. There's a reason they go shallow. The sun's warming up the water. The weeds are starting to sprout. The crayfish are coming up out of the mud. The frogs come up out of the mud also, because I don't know if you guys know that, but frogs do hibernate. all those food sources are starting to emerge from their winter patterns and being out in the water. And the sun itself, like I said, the warmer water, the shallower water is going to get warmer faster, which is going to get to their spawning temperature faster. And fish are cold-blooded creatures; they feed on that warmth, so that tends to draw them. All species of fish shallow at some point in the springtime, but carp are notorious for going crazy shallow. Like you can be sitting there. I know, as Sam was talking about earlier, you can literally sit there and see them basically swim up on the bank, chasing each other, stuff like that.
Like 2 or 3 inches sticking out of the water. I'm like, I'm not gonna push you in there, buddy, because that's clay.
Yeah, exactly.
See, when they flood, they do it once a year here. When they bring it back to summer pool, they'll bring it really high for like 2 days, and it floods our refuge. And the buffalo, while the refuge is flooded, will come up in there and spawn in the cornfields.
I believe it.
You have to come down one time when it's happening.
I should. That'd be cool to see. Don R asked, where are they when the lake is froze over? It's got them stumped. Well, my understanding when it comes to winter fishing for carp, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be in the deepest hole you can find. The second best option is going to be somewhere that's next to some sort of current, but deeper water that's going to be bringing them food, but it has to have a slack water area because they are not wanting to swim very much. They're going to be very lethargic and whatnot. But like I said, if you could find a hole where a shoal is stored up where there could be 20 or 30 fish in that same hole, so if you can get them going on a feeding frenzy, you can have a really good time. But as for under the ice, it's the same concept as anybody else in open water. You're just looking for that deepest water or something that's got some sort of a little bit of current coming through that's bringing them food. And again, that depends on the body of water you're fishing.
So up here, most of the carps, they empty out of the smaller lakes because very few of our lakes are actually like landlocked. They're all connected. And that's actually how Native Americans back in the day used to do like the trade and stuff like that. Which I can get into that in another time. It's really cool. You can go or one side of the state to the other side of the state without ever getting out of a canoe. Yeah, I had to do a report. But anyway,
Good.
So most of the carp up here, they just empty out of the smaller lakes and they just go into the Great Lakes. I actually saw some over because you can notice those things a mile away just because they're big. But yeah, they're running right now in like the mouths of the river and stuff like that.
They're big. The water's clear, and half the time they're jumping out of the water too. So
they don't really jump up here.
They do down here, man. When they do, they especially in the very early like sunrise and sunset, man, they are laughing as all get out. You know they're there. And it's both exciting and annoying. Like if you're fishing for them, it's great. If you're trying to sleep, it's awful.
I think I'm gonna go hit that spot this year that we tried fishing for them.
Go for it, man. I really do think they'd be in there at some point during the year. I just don't know when. That thing was absolutely loaded with lily pads, and it had deeper water and shallower water. I mean, it wasn't that far from the main channel. It looks too good to not have something there at least. But like I said, we talked a little bit about the behavior and where to find them. But one of the other ways to find them is just like any other fishing. If you're using electronics or topographical maps, all that good stuff. Like I said, you're looking for that shallower water that's near that deeper water. They're going to be hitting those areas first, and they'll just continue to push shallower, shallower, and shallower. So if you know they were in a deep hole, and then you see a flat coming off that hole, that flat's what you should be targeting for the first part of the spring. And then as it gets warmer and closer to the spawning, then you go shallower and shallower. And like I said, once the spawn hits, it's my experience, you just put the carp gear away and go fish something else for a week and a half or whatever till they're done, because they do not eat when they're spawning. I mean, you can literally throw it right in front of their face. They're not touching it. It's insane. I've cast it to them. I've dropped it on their head. I've hit them with the sinker. No, doesn't do anything. They're not touching it. But yeah.
So what's your setup like when you go carp fishing? Like, I'm guessing you're using a heavy pole, like a real stiff one.
No, actually, really not. So carp have a soft mouth, right? So you really can't go super stiff or super heavy or super crazy with it because you're just as likely to rip the hook out of their face as you are to land them. Um, if you think they have it's a fleshy mouth, but it's really really soft like a crappie. It's a thicker mouth, but you got to think they're bigger fish too. You know, you're getting these fish that are quite easily hitting 20 pounds or more, and have a soft mouth. So you really have to have your drag set kind of loose if you're gonna use a heavier rod. Personally, I use my catfishing gear, which I don't use super heavy catfishing gear. All mine's medium heavy. I do have a set of the Euro style carp fishing rods, which are nice, but they're not necessary. You know, they're considered probably maybe they might be a medium, but they're definitely pushing medium heavy. So and like 'cause I use the bait running reels, I use 30-pound test line when I'm fishing for them. Just because there are quite a few 30-pounders in the area that I've not landed one yet, but I've gotten close. Highest for me is 26 and a half, but I have several friends that have caught 30s. And so I use 30-pound test a lot, but also because I fish a lot of shell beds, not oyster beds, but zebra mussel beds. And that stuff just tears through your line like crazy. So I know a lot of people like use braid for them, but braid doesn't have any stretch or any kind of really abrasion resistance. So it's just not a good idea, in my opinion. But I have seen people. So if I'm fishing in an area where I know there's a ton of small fish, a ton of small fish, then obviously I'm gonna go with lighter line. 15-pound, 12-pound, something like that.
Yeah.
Because carp do spook. I mean, I'm not gonna lie about that. It's very easy to spook a carp. If you're watching from Europe, obviously you guys hear about this way more than we do here in the States. Wild carp are a lot less prone to spooking because they're not used to being caught all the time, especially with the low fishing pressure that we have here in the United States. So you can get away with using a more obnoxious line or more obnoxious hook links or leaders, or what we want to call them. But for me, I typically use a fluorocarbon leader to get rid of that and to get rid of that factor, I should say, and it works just fine. But again, I'm using for at least 20-pound line, usually using 30 because the areas I fish. Plus, I'm just as likely here in Tennessee to catch a catfish as I am to catch a carp. And obviously, catfish can get way bigger here, pushing over 100 pounds, quite easy. So it's something to keep in mind with the gear too, because of where I'm fishing. Makes a big difference. Uncle Don also says a black gnat on a fly rod works well at times. Yeah, I also know several people that catch carp on fly rods. They use all kinds of crazy patterns. One of my favorite ones is either there's a one when the mulberries are starting to drop off the bushes. Use a mulberry colored fly. They really have a good time. It's fun to watch those videos where it's just literally like they'll hook into one, it'll pop off, and then another one will hit just as soon as the other one hooked off. It's pretty crazy how opportunistic they are, I guess, chasing after mulberry bushes and hitting them as they hit the water and stuff and whatnot. But and that's just matching the hatch. We talked about that in other episodes too. I know Sam matches the hatch with other species too. It's not just for one species or the other. It's something you do for every species. Match the hatch, match the color. In his case, last week I think it was last episode, we were talking about using roe for salmon, and you match the color roe. So I mean, it's definitely something that everybody should be doing.
I won't lie, I do get really bored at times, and I'll put like kid slime and like a spawn bag or whatever, and I'll throw that out there. Just
you never know. It never hurts to experiment. But generally
once
speaking,
or twice, yeah, for sure.
Generally speaking, you match the hatch, and it's just common practice and good practice, I should say, for anybody who's trying to catch fish. But your tactics do change with this time of year. That mulberry hatch or a mayfly hatch, obviously using flies or some sort of bug imitation is going to do better. If you have a crawfish that are emerging like you see in the spring, you're going to catch a lot more fish using crawfish imitations that way. If you have a really large population of zebra mussels for whatever reason one year compared to another, then obviously the clam baits are going to do better. But the one I typically use for carp is going to be corn. You can use canned corn. I boil feed corn personally out in a pressure cooker because it ends up being it's bigger first off, but it's also sturdier. Bluegills and turtles cannot take it off the hook as easy. so it eliminates a lot of the nuisance fish for me. But then then when you have a lot of nuisance species or a lot of crayfish that are tearing up your baits too, that's when a lot of people go to those boilies because you can boil them as long as you want to and make them as hard as you want to. That way those nuisance species can't mess with it so much.
So about how much feed corn do you normally go through, like trying to catch these things?
Okay, so if say I'm gonna go fishing on a Saturday, before work on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm going to take half a 5-gallon bucket of boiled feed corn and I'm gonna go throw it in the spot I'm fishing. So what's that? 7.5 gallons of corn before I get to even fish it. Which I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a whole lot because
No, that's about a bag.
well, it depends on how big of a bag. Like I have a 50-pound bag of corn. I've probably can get 8 or 10 good weekends out of it. Because that feed corn, especially when you boil it long enough, it ends up getting to be about 2.5, 3 times the size. So I mean, like I said, a half-gallon bucket on basically I'm using a half-gallon bucket of dry corn.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I was thinking like, yeah, a lot more corn than that.
Well, yeah, so if I'm using a 50-pound bag, essentially I'm making 150 pounds of boiled feed corn.
Yeah.
And like I said, I probably get 10 weekends, 8 or 10 weekends out of that, doing the whole, a bucket and a half of boiled feed corn before the trip, and then take another half of basically 2 buckets of corn on the way out there. But there's been some times where I've put more than that. If I got a buddy of mine that's going with me too, and we're gonna have 6 rods out there, well then I'm throwing, 10 or 15 gallons worth of corn out there for that trip. And it's just a matter of making sure the fish are in the area. And it matters more for me because I fish on the Chickamauga Lake and Nickajack Lake, which are these huge reservoirs. There's going to be shoals of carp that move around. They could have 10 fish. They could have 200 fish, and a carp can eat a third of its body weight in a day. So if you think about it, a 20-pound carp's going to be eating, like 7.5 pounds of food by itself in a day. Which that's not a lot when you think about it, but it is at the same time. Because I mean, if I say I have 150 pounds of boiled feed corn, well, I'm only feeding 20 fish with that. If they eat their full body weight in a day, or sorry, their full amount in a day. So I mean, keeping that in mind, it's really hard to overfeed them in the spring and in the summer and before the spawn in the fall. But it completely shuts down in the winter. Like I said, once they stop being active, they don't eat jack. They might eat like their body weight worth total the whole entire winter. It's completely different. So yeah. I guess there's something else I need to say about that too. If I'm going to be throwing the corn, I'm going to be throwing sweet feed too. So I really do. I guess I do a 5-gallon bucket every time. I do 3 5-gallon buckets of bait a weekend minimum.
So does it matter? So I'm a hunter.
Mhm.
I go through way too much corn.
Yeah.
Well, I used to when baiting was legal. Funny story about that. So people buy bait or deer feed here all the time now. And I asked a DNR officer, I was like, so what do you guys do? He's like, if people call, we'll give you a $10 fine, but there's 10 of us in the state and there's a lot of hunters, so we don't care.
Smooth.
Right.
Probably should have put that out in the internet world for everybody to know about, but dang, that's insane.
I mean, it's only up here, so
well, still, yeah, but and again, if you can't chum, then it's a whole different story. Like you said, when I'm fishing with Zach down in Alabama, sorry, my foot itches. When I'm fishing with Zach down in Alabama, he can't chum, so we use pack baits down there, and it's purely because of the fact that it's still considered to be on the hook because it's like a doe.
Yeah.
And that's the way to get around it. But you can't.
Them dangs Alabama's carps are elusive.
Oh,
yeah.
so
I have not caught one in Alabama. Go ahead.
Does like molasses coated feed? Does that matter because it's sweeter?
That sweet feed does have molasses in it, and I can say, in my experience, especially fishing in colder months, that dipping my corn in molasses before I cast it out does have a major difference on whether or not I get bites.
So, do
Um,
you know that you can get like 50 pounds of powdered molasses for like $10?
I did know that.
Okay, okay.
I also know that, like I said, the sweet feed already has molasses in it. I chum with that, and then also I use something called PVA mesh, which is a dissolvable mesh. That's made out of cornstarch. It dissolves in water, and I'll put sweet feed in that, and I'll put that on my hook too. So when my hook goes in the water, I got the corn on the hook, but then that little bag of stuff dissolves and falls on top of the. Here's my hook, right? Here's my hook, and I have this pile of.
Over a little
Sweet.
bit. There you go.
Oh, sorry, ADD. My dog was being a puppy.
You're good. Welcome in, Chrissy Brown. Hope you're doing fantastic. But yeah, so like I said, for me, corn and sweet feed or corn and molasses is my go-to. But I've also done it with honey. I've done it with on the pack bait side of things. I've done it with oats and cream corn. I've done it with oats, cream corn, and peaches. Oats, cream corn, any other kind of fruit. Sweet potatoes I've done also. Honey nut Cheerios and sweet potatoes, honey nut Cheerios and cream style corn. I mean, people
How do
catch
you
them.
prep a sweet potato for fishing? Like, do you
So I
bake
use
it?
the canned yams is what I'm talking about. I mean, they're sweet potatoes, but they're canned, right? So they're kind of mushy, they're syrupy, they're sweet, all that good stuff. But I have seen videos of people catching them with, the melon ballers.
Yeah.
Melon ballers. They take a melon baller and they'll actually cut out a circle out of a sweet potato and use that on their hook because turtles can't mess with it. And I've seen them catch them on that too. Which is different.
Now, so what you're telling me is carp have diabetes.
And may very well may be, man. They really seem to like sweet stuff. But I like I said, I also have caught them on really fishy smelling stuff and on really spicy stuff too. I've done it with chili powder. I've done it with hot sauce. I've seen people do it with sriracha. I mean, it just for some reason, really strong, potent flavors seem to do really well to get them going. Especially for them to find the bait. Because here's the issue, right? There's so much natural food in a lot of these lakes that you have, if you're gonna, especially if you're pre-baiting or it's just showing up for the day, you have to give them enough of something for them to be like, "What is that?" You know?
Yeah. You have to
And then,
entice them.
right, so you either have to train them into knowing what the bait is, that's what pre-baiting does, or chumming does, right? Or you have to make it so strong that it strikes their curiosity. One of the two. And both of those are going to set you up for success when it comes to getting bites from carp. One other thing to be aware of, if you want to go down the rabbit hole of carp rigs, you can go for hours and hours and hours and find all kinds of different stuff. Pretty much every way you can possibly tie a hook to line or tie two pieces of line together or whatever is going to have some random name from some random guy in some random country that invented it, right? And all of them are going to claim it to be the best rig. But for most people, and I say most people, I'm going to say most people in the United States, if you tie a bog standard hair rig or just a snell knot and just have your corn on the hook itself, you're going to be doing just fine. The only benefit to the hair rigs is you're going to have less turtles bite because they're more likely to bite the corn off the line and not get hooked, as opposed to having to bite the corn off the hook. So I mean, just something to keep my fish in really turtley waters, then you're going to want to consider doing a hair rig, which is basically a snell knot, except it's got a tag end with a loop on it, so you can put the bait on that tag end, and then slide a piece of grass or a stick or something through the loop to keep it from falling off.
Yeah, I use a piece of stick.
I use grass all the time. You know, they sell the. Huh?
Didn't you say that you like our first or second episode? You donated a $500 rod to the Gulf of Mexico because a fish took it.
Me?
Yeah, you talk
Yeah,
about
you.
talk about that
My
rod you
arm.
lost across.
Yeah, that, and I lost 5 other rods that year.
So you're
He
broken.
did
You're
not have.
using a stick. That makes sense now. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. A little bit out of context, but yes, no, for sure. He's definitely using sticks. Poor guy. That and using flip phones.
Yeah.
I miss my Razor. Thing was the most durable phone I've ever had.
But yeah, a couple other things to point out when it comes to, like, say, carp fishing here in the spring. You're gonna have to be able to adapt to changing conditions. Once they hit that spawn, it's literally gonna be like a turn on to a turn off. They hit water's getting warmer pre-spawn. They hit spawn, they completely stop. Spawns over, they're right back to on. So you're gonna have these periods where there's a fast bite, a slow bite, and a fast bite. So just being aware of that, being patient with it, and persistent. Um, we'll get into a little bit more on tactics in a minute. Here's a couple other things we didn't cover. But observation is going to be your friend. Keep an eye on where they're at, looking for them in shallow water, seeing if they are spawning or not spawning. All those things are major players in whether or not you're going to be able to catch carp in the spring. And the observation part also goes into stealth. One of the tactics that's really popular to catch carp in the spring is a technique that's referred to as called stalking. And this is where you take a lighter rod setup. You're going really slow. You're moving along the bank, and you're literally sight casting to these carp, whether it be with dog food, whether it be with bread, whether it be with. I see people use cotton balls to imitate bread, just because they do float. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. But the idea, you can do it with corn too. You can a couple of kernels of corn on a really light hook. The idea is that your bait is so light that when it hits the water, it doesn't make a big disturbance and doesn't spook them. It's just enough to catch their attention. And then you can actually watch them suck it in. Or if it's a completely floating bait, then you can just watch them completely suck it off top of the water. That is one way I want to catch carp. I have never caught a carp doing that, though. I've never had that chance. But it's very, very popular, especially over in Europe, to do so. And that's another thing, too. Carp fishing. Here in the States, we have a very large wild carp population. And again, that's where the bow fishing comes into play. That's where the whole invasive species thing comes into play. But there's a ton of pay lakes here in the United States, too. Which, if you don't know what a pay lake is, basically you pay to go fish this lake and you pay per pound of fish that you pull out of that lake. And that's how it works. In Europe, they have what's called syndicate lakes, which are very similar. Rather than paying for per pound of fish you catch, you pay for the chance to fish this stocked lake. And this lake is stocked with they're called specimen carp. A lot of them are mirror carp. They have like all kinds of funky patterns, stuff like that. And a lot of them even have names. Usually the first person that catches it gets to name it. You hear all kinds of crazy ones. There's one that's called the parrot. There's one that's called, there was one called Jack the Ripper for a long time. There was a bunch of these crazy ones that all had these famous names that, some are still around, some aren't. But yeah, it's crazy how wow, I really can't talk today. It's crazy how complex some of these setups can be for carp fishing.
That kind of feels wrong in a way. Like, yeah, we have this giant fish tank. Like, go ahead and throw a worm in there and see what we pull up there, Junior. Like, I don't know.
Right. So another thing too, you got to think about though, over there's not a whole lot of wild water, right?
Oh, good point. Good point.
It's heavily polluted. So what they are they're these stocked fisheries, and they don't have just carp. A lot of them have whales, catfish, and other stuff too. But they're raised as a fishery. It's almost the same as the conservation officers here with the creel limits and stuff, right? They're trying to make the fishery better. But there, rather than everybody gets access to it as long as they have a license. There, you have to have a license, plus you have to have the syndicate ticket in order to be able to fish that lake. And you can only fish it a couple days a year or whatever, too.
Gotcha. All right, that makes more sense. I thought it was like, all right, you gave us $20, now you can go and fish in our giant.
Oh, what you're saying is what you're talking about is more closely resembles a pay lake here in the United States. In terms of you pay for the chance to fish, and then you pay for the pounds of fish you bring out. And where a lot of the controversy comes when it comes to pay lakers or not pay lakers is going to be completely dependent on whether or not you think that's okay, or whether or not you believe that they're actually taking care of their fishery. A lot of them have a bad raps for people showing up and like half the fish are dead on the side of the bank because they literally catch them from wild waters, or they'll buy them and then they'll just put them in there and they never mess with them again. And that's the difference.
Gotcha. I can see that being okay for somebody like that's never fished, like a good introduction or something, because if you can tell you're blue in the face, like fishing is a great sport, but their first time out, you fish for like 4 hours, they don't get a bite, like
They're
you're
not going to
lying.
fish again.
This sucks.
Right.
So I can see how that would be kind of cool for like, you know, a newbie. But yeah, all right, I'll shut up. I guess it has its place.
But say, and I'm never gonna. I'm not personally a fan of pay lakes. I mean, will I ever fish one? Maybe. Would I ever fish a syndicate lake over in Europe? Yes, I would. Because those are, like I said, they're highly maintained fisheries. They're select stock of people can go fish it and whatnot, and the stuff that you can catch is absolutely crazy in those. But like you said, I can see where it feels like kind of like shooting a fish out of a barrel, right? And
Yeah.
that's where it's different. Like I'm always gonna prefer wild carp fishing or wild water carp fishing, however you want to call it, because you never know what's gonna happen. You never know what you're gonna find. You know, on those lakes they have pictures of everything. Somebody's caught it and they put a picture of it, so you kind of know what's in that lake, and you're like, oh, I hope I get this one. You know, but it's different. That's for sure. It's a different style of fishing. It's not for everybody, I'm sure.
So touching on what you just said, I don't know if your state does this, but I love how Michigan, like in certain areas that are pretty popular with kayakers, canoers, fishermen, they have a list of like the top 10 most popular fish that's caught in this area. And it has like a picture of what they look like, the state and world record, and minimum size that you can keep. And
That would be awesome. More places did that.
Yeah, I absolutely
It
love that
would.
because when I was in the Upper Peninsula this summer, I always look at these signs like, oh, okay, that's just bluegill, bass, whatever. And then the one on the Upper Peninsula had muskie, and I was like, I have
Muskie.
never seen top 10 fish being a muskie, where the
Right.
minimum size is 45 inches. I'm like, I know where I'm going this summer.
Right, no kidding. Exactly.
Like I have a tackle
No,
box dedicated to muskie right now that I've been
it
working
would
on.
it would it would definitely be cool if more places did that. I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. They put all those they put all those regulation books out. A lot of states do them for free. So you can actually look at the regulation stuff. A lot of them have it on their website, stuff like that too. But especially when you have like areas that have specific things. Like I remember when I lived in Michigan, there was a whole section of the river by my house. Actually, I think it was most of that river was single hook only. You know, but every bait you don't want to use and you'd buy it brand new had a treble hook on it, so you had to swap the hooks out. You know.
So now how it's worded is you can use the smaller treble hooks, just plain, but I can't remember the size. But once it gets to a certain size, it has to be just single hooks, just if you're not on like a lure or something. But they don't make you change out your treble hooks for just single hooks now on your at
Gotcha.
least your So that's nice.
I say, like I said, that one specific part, I think it was called the Platte River, and it was like I said, a very large stretch of it was literally it could only be single hooks.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's still some parts like that, but
Like, well, that's what I'm saying. Though places like that, if they had those kind of things put up and posted, like you said on those signs, it would be a lot
yeah,
more convenient. Because oh, hey, I'm going to go travel this way for the weekend. Did I read the right paragraph? You know, or hey, there's a sign. You know, and to me that would be a lot more convenient and a lot more usable by people.
yeah, and it's not like some places you go fishing you don't have access to your phone just because,
Lack of service.
Yep.
On the boonies.
That's
But
why
yeah.
I screenshot my fishing license every year.
Yeah. That's why I screenshot mine too for the same reason, so I can show it to him. And another thing, when it comes to carp fishing, bringing it back, I should say, because we went off on a little bit of a tangent, but bringing it back to carp fishing, if you're fishing for anything in the spring, keep in mind that if you are fishing around spawning fish or near spawning fish, you are going to mess with their production capability in some form or fashion, whether it be you spooked the nest and they got dirt on it, whether you took the defending parent away and some of the eggs get robbed. Just something to keep in mind. You might be okay with it, you might not be. I will say carp's one of the safer species to mess with when they're spawning because they spawn so much, and they are highly populated in a lot of areas. They're in borderline overpopulated in some places.
Which carp don't make a bed, do they?
No, they don't.
They're free spawners.
Correct. They go by grass and drop it off. That's all they do. They don't even protect the beds afterwards. They drop it off and go away. Pretty much every other species of fish has a parent pair where the mom lays the eggs and the dad protects the nest till the fry are big enough. Carp, no, they just drop it off and keep going. In fact, carp eat their own eggs. If you like other carp will eat other carp's eggs. It's just the way it is. But they produce so many eggs that it doesn't matter.
So they're just like, good luck later.
Yeah, deuces. So it's insane. And then, like I said, in certain areas of the country, they spawn 2 or 3 times a year. I know in Tennessee they spawn twice at least. I don't think they do a third spawn, but like down in Texas, they spawn 3 times. If I'm not mistaken, there's some in Arizona too. They do it 3 times there. Certain parts of California 3 times. Alabama, Southern Alabama, I'm pretty sure does 3 times. I mean, it's just a matter of right place, right time, I guess, right? If you have one of those areas where the water never really goes below, 52 degrees, well, then you're hovering in their spawning area the whole entire time in the winter. And that's where you get those multiple spawns. And that's where you get those higher populations too. And certain places are different anyway. Like I think it's out in Utah. I'm probably gonna get the name. I think it's Lake Mead is out in Utah, if I'm not mistaken. That one's a really overpopulated lake. They have an absolute ton of carp, and like almost all of them are like under 10 pounds. Those are the fisheries where that's where you can argue they're overpopulated. There's not enough other predatory species eating the eggs. There's not enough people catching them. There's not enough people bow fishing them, whatever, to maintain a trophy population. Here in the South and in Tennessee and stuff like that, bow fishing is popular enough that you do see get a lot of these bigger fish. I'm fortunate that I've only ever hooked into 1 carp while I've been fishing that was less than. Every single one I've landed and weighed was over 10 pounds. The one that I'm pretty sure was 8 pounds, maybe 6 pounds, it fell off the hook while I was lifting it up. So, yeah, but like I said, my biggest 26 and a half. I'd say my personal average on carp fishing here on the Tennessee River is around 16 or 17 pounds, which is pretty freaking sweet. If you think about it, really. A lot of people chasing bass, and if they get a 5-pound bass, they're happy. If they get a 2-pound crappie, they're happy. I'm here catching, on average, 16, 17-pound fish.
If I get a 2-pound bass, I'm happy.
Well, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's like an advertised fish down south versus up here, though. It's totally different. You guys are talking like, oh yeah, 50-pound catfish. I'm like, man, our salmon don't even give 50 pounds. That's our biggest fish here.
You got sturgeon.
I've fished for like more than 30 years of my life. I've hooked 1.
In your kayak.
That was not a fun experience.
I want to experience that.
I did too. Oh my god!
I was going under docks. I was like a turtle, dude. Sometimes, no, doing that with an 8-foot fishing pole. It was a fun experience. It's like, how was this described? It was sucked at the time, but it was one of the best memories ever. Kind of like roller coasters are fun now, but like 10 years down the road, you're like, I don't even remember that. Where that sucked, but it's like a great memory now.
Sure.
But I came home that night. I was so mad. I was like, didn't even get to keep that stupid fish. But
how big was it again?
It was like 6 feet.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, I couldn't. I was guesstimating, by like this was at night, and I was guesstimating by the size of my kayak. I want to say it was like a 10-foot kayak, and it was more than half of that.
Nice. So 6 foot probably reasonable.
Yeah,
Anthony, I know where we need to go next year.
Well, Michigan.
I got spare rooms.
But
if I'm here, like I'm looking at property in Tennessee, so
there's lots of videos where people are sturgeon fishing and they completely breach the water and almost land on the kayaks. That would be a little scary, but I think it would still be fun. And I know
the kayak like me and yours, they'd breach the water and go to land on the kayak and be like, "Hey, they landed themselves."
Somewhat. I mean, if you get one that's 6 or 8 feet long, they're still going to make it rough, and they're strong fish. I would be interesting to say the least. Is all I can say to that.
I've heard of them getting 9-10 feet long up here. So,
well, out west, the people was it the record's 14 feet in Oregon, I think.
Yeah,
12 feet, something like that for the white sturgeon. I mean, man, it would be insane Catch a fish
Yep.
longer than the kayak.
Yep, I want to go sturgeon fishing off the kayak now.
We can do that, or we can go alligator gar fishing
I'd be down for either, man. I really would.
in a kayak.
Yeah, I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
That's like
would
a
have a
hold my
blast.
beer situation. And
Yeah,
We'll
exactly.
have Sam paddling, you pedaling, and me sitting back cruising.
we're all going to be missing body parts by the end of this adventure, though.
Probably. We'll have to move the show to your channel so it matches. We'll all be amputees.
So I did have one question about like rigging for carp.
Sure.
Could you do like a Alabama rig kind of situation with corn?
If your state allows you to use multiple hooks on one line, yes, you could do something like that. And it's quite common in certain parts of the world, especially in Asia, to fish that way for carp. Because, yes, they do have carp in Asia as well.
Well,
They can literally fish with as many hooks as they feel like throwing. Here in Tennessee, you can only use 3 hooks if they're above a size 2. So I have done that. I've done a lot of double hook rigs too, where I just had like the sinker was a Carolina rig down to a 3-way swivel and just had a hook off all the other 2 tines.
so kind of like a crappie rig.
I've done that several times.
Okay.
But I find that here on the Tennessee River with all the current that it tangles a lot. So I tend to just do the single hook instead and just put more bait on that hook in particular, or fish a chummed area. Seems to do much better for me overall. Monty Sheets, welcome in, buddy.
I'm just trying to think of like ways to do this without it getting tangled. Like maybe a longer something.
If you like I said, if you go down the whole world of carp tackle rigging, especially from the European style of fishing side of things, they sell all kinds of stuff. They sell they're called anti-tangle sleeves, like a little piece of rubber that's about this long, that's green or brown or black or whatever. You can get them to match the type of bottom you're fishing, and it slides up over the swivel, and then your line goes through it, and it's to keep the line rigid like this at the base of the swivel. Your end will still flop.
That is so cool.
I mean, you could do it with shrink tubing too. It's the same concept. You obviously got to be careful not to get too hot so you don't melt the line. But the idea is that you have just a stiff piece of something that holds it out a little bit, and they go absolutely crazy. I mean, they make things that. Yes, Monty, I was talking about that earlier. That's literally I call it the American way. Carolina rig with corn on it. I mean, it's just easy, and it works. But yeah, so you literally go crazy. There's just to name off some of these fancy rigs. You got the German rig, the blowback rig, the Zig rig, the chod rig, the naked chod rig, the helicopter rig. And then it's all variations of where the sinker is in relation to the hook and how many pieces of rubber or plastic you have on it. Really, and that's the easiest way to describe it. I mean, and they all have their different purposes. Like, the chod rigs and the helicopter rigs, those are supposed to be a way to make your bait never sink into the muck or to land on top of weeds and your sinker be stuck in the weeds. Just so fish can see your bait and not have to actually go into the weeds to find it. I mean, or just to be completely simple, they call it a running rig there, but it's the Carolina rig here. It's literally the same thing. And then like here, if we fish with a fixed sinker rig, they would call that a bolt rig. The idea with that is the fish takes a bait, they feel they swim away, they feel the sinker, and then they take off really fast and bolt. Right, hence the bolt rig. And it's literally the same thing as a fixed sinker rig here. I mean, it's just literally what they call it versus what we call it is a totally different ballgame. Just like different people call the same species of fish different things based on the part of the country they're in. But then on top of that, like I said, they have some really, really fancy, crazy stuff where it's a combination of absolute insanity to come up with this stuff. And you can really get lost in that. And it's for no reason. Like I said, for the majority of people, just a Carolina rig or a fixed sinker rig with some corn on the hook's the way to go.
So I found one of our sporting goods are actually, so up here we don't have Academy or any big outdoor stores except for one, and there's only 2 of them in like the United States, so it's kind of cool. But they have a wall of rigs, and I wanted to send you a picture of it, but I couldn't find it. But it's every rig that you can imagine from all over the world, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
just labeled. Yeah, I went to because I go there like once a month because I'm not allowed to go there more than that because reasons.
We'll get in trouble.
That's happened once or twice.
Money. Get it?
But they just had this wall up. I'm like, holy crap! Like, I'm familiar with the half a dozen of these, and that's about it. Like, I would
That's
just
about
like taking pictures. I was like zooming in the ones I wanted to try, and I think it's on my other phone because I couldn't find those pictures on there. But next time I'm down there, I'll take it.
You should. I'd be interested in seeing that.
Yeah.
And Monty, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, I have never caught a grass carp. It's on my bucket list. It's going to happen eventually, but I have yet to catch one.
I
But
know
have
a
been-
pond that has them in it.
I've also been told that cherry tomatoes is one of the best baits you can use to catch them.
Then
For
you
whatever
can eat
reason.
your bait while you're fishing.
Yeah. You kind of
I
can
would-
with carp anyway, if you think about it. Using canned corn, or if you're doing like the strawberry jello and oatmeal and corn setup pack bait, I mean, you can eat all of that stuff in theory.
That's something that you would bet your friend, like, I'll give you this Reese cup if you eat that.
Whether you be owing me a Reese cup, because I'll eat it. I mean, it's just food grade stuff. I mean, whatever.
All right, so if I make like a carp bait for you this summer, like when we go fishing,
I have to
together-
know what's in it. I have to
No.
know what's in it.
No,
Yes.
no.
Oh, I have to
You
know
know,
what's
it won't kill you. I promise.
I have to know what's in it.
All right, so I'll tell you what's in it, but you have to eat it.
No,
If you eat it, I'll eat it.
that's fair.
All right.
All right, I'll do it if you do it. Okay, here we go.
Hey Zach, is it safe to eat raw cow liver? Just
I think so.
all
Hey,
right.
Billy Hondo, welcome in. You're here just in time. We're gonna do a couple minute intermission, but we have just been talking about carp fishing, springtime carp fishing, how they go from deep wintering holes in big schools, how they stay in the school but go in shallow water. They spawn around 55 degrees. They're eating tons of food. You can pre-bait for them. You can use typical catfish gear to catch them. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but it can be as complicated as you want it to be, and it gets more and more complicated in other parts of the world. Carp are a worldwide species. They can be found pretty much anywhere, including Australia and Africa. Basically, anywhere that the Europeans touched, there's carp in some form or fashion.
Well,
And
carp
it's-
is the number one eating fish in all the world, except for
Right.
the United States.
right, where they're considered a trash fish.
Yeah.
Where they polar opposites. We just got to be different.
Like
We got to be
all
aggravated.
bad.
Exactly.
That's the American way.
Right. But yeah, when we get back from this intermission, we're going to start talking about drift fishing from the bank in creeks, rivers, and streams. So make sure you stick around for that. Like I said, we're going to do this 2-minute intermission. Get your popcorn, get you a drink, use the restroom if you have to, and we will be back very, very shortly.
Grab your rods and tackle box, folks, as we dive into the wild world of fishing. Get ready for some laughs, some fish stories, and a touch of chaos as we wade into the deep waters of fishing wisdom. Our guides on this trip are a know-it-all, a guy who desperately needs a haircut, and a man named Sam. In this podcast, this motley crew shares their knowledge, their latest fishing antics, and probably get into more trouble than they bargained for. It's a podcast as unpredictable as the sport of fishing. If you love fishing, then this is the place to be, because in this podcast, every catch is a big one. Every story is a keeper, and the only thing more legendary than the tales is the trio delivering them. Welcome to the Bait Tank.
All right. We are here for the second half of the show. If you're new here, welcome in. This is the Bait Tank video podcast. We do a bi-monthly. No, is that right? It's a bi-monthly or bi-weekly. We do it every other week.
Bi-weekly.
We do a bi-weekly video podcast about fishing. Everything
If we
about
got it bi-monthly,
species.
it'd be every 2 months.
Yeah, see, I can never remember. I always get it backwards. So we do the show every other weekend. We talk about fishing in all aspects, forms, and situations, whether it be streams, whether it be lakes, reservoirs, kayaks, boats, bank fishing. We even dip into saltwater fishing sometimes, believe it or not. If you're into that kind of thing, make sure you're liking and subscribing. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss another episode. For those who are here, we appreciate the hook sets. We are glad you're here, checking us out, tuning in with us. And yeah, so now, second half of the show, we just got done talking about carp fishing in the spring, but now we want to shift it over to multi-species fishing, specifically drift fishing from the bank in rivers, creeks, and streams. So this one, I've talked a lot in the first part because I've done more carp fishing than these guys, but I know these two gentlemen here do a lot of creek fishing. They do a little bit more than I do for sure. Zach primarily for catching bait, but Sam because it's more popular body of water up there where he's at than they are down here.
Oh yeah, we got tons of trout creeks.
For sure. So Sam, adjust your camera a little bit so everybody can see you, but then why don't you want
Sorry, puppy problem.
why don't you
That's why I moved my camera, because she was being very needy during the break.
yeah, I got you. But yeah, why don't you explain the difference between a creek, a stream, a river, and a brook?
It's basically the size. A brook is just going to be, well, if you see a fish, you can just grab it out of the water. It's very shallow. It's just I think I've seen minnows in brooks. That's about it. Creek, stream. Well, creek is a little bit bigger. Normally, it's deeper into the woods. So if you do go fishing, and I've actually done this many times, I use an ice fishing pole, so it's like this big, because creeks are normally in the woods, and that way you don't gotta deal with a huge fishing rod. I've actually also used a dock demon before. Don't do that, because I caught a, what was it, 7-pound steelhead, which I was not I was not expecting that.
That had to have been fun.
It was under like a cedar roots, and he came up and it was like an alligator in like those corny movies. It was just like all you saw was just a wave and
Jaws
snap.
Yeah.
I was like, huh. So yeah, I pulled up my ugly stick ice rod and I caught him. That's how I know how much he weighed. Because he still had my fly in his mouth. Stream is, you're looking at probably 5 to 7 feet across. Probably about knee high. That's a typical stream up here. Creeks are about 2 or 3 feet more in the woods. And it normally starts off like a babbling brook, and it just kind of evolves. All the little tributaries just kind of flow into one larger body of water. And then, yeah, it goes creek, stream, and then you're pretty much to a river.
And then after river, you get the places like the Mississippi River where it's miles across. It might as well be a lake that just moves.
What's the point?
Yeah, exactly. So, like you said, you're talking about creeks being in the woods and dodging trees. So, obviously, most of these bodies of water are accessible from the bank, and honestly, are probably fished better from a bank than they are from a boat.
Yeah, it's you grab snake boots and you just head into the woods. And I say grab snake boots because Michigan doesn't have any snakes that'll kill you. I've seen cottonmouths out here, and I've seen a couple of venomous snakes, including rattlesnakes, and I know cottonmouths can kill you. And where there's creeks and streams, that's where they're at. So,
right.
And
if I'm not mistaken, the only one that's supposedly in Michigan is the Watauga rattler. I think is how you pronounce that.
Yeah, where if you get bit, it gives you flu-like symptoms for a day. I've seen one of those. It was still like 4 feet long. I'm like, no.
Those teeth still hurt.
Right? Exactly.
Like, I do not. And how I found one of those was, it was a scary. I was camping in my youth.
This one time at band camp?
Yeah, pretty much.
I grew up with rednecks, so I was 18. There's nothing to do. So, we went camping in the woods. We went fishing. And also swampy area where these things like to hang out. I might have had a couple of adult beverages. I don't get
Not you.
I was like 17, 18. And
Confessions of a Fisherman.
right? And I go to pick up sticks for this
Oh, no.
fire.
With the meat.
Yeah. I picked up a rattlesnake.
Perfect.
That thing like lunged at me, and I was like drunken Jackie Chan. I just threw this wacky noodle thing. Yeah, I had no idea what it was.
Just that it moved.
Well, it tried to bite me, and I don't blame it at all.
Right.
And I went to go look at it, and I was like, it just tails going. I was like, huh. I've heard of you, but I've never seen you before.
Right.
And this was before like cameras were a thing on phones, so
right. Monty said that he's terrified of 3-inch snakes. He don't like them. That's fair.
And then you come in my house. I have venomous snakes. I have other snakes and bigger snakes. And
yeah. You're a special kind of individual.
Oh, very
do you
much.
have anti-venom there or anything
at his house? I don't know. Do you have any venom at your house, sir?
No, but I do have a bite protocol. I can't inject myself with anti-venom. I have to go to a hospital for it. And all the species I keep are native, so they have anti-venom on stock.
That is also fair, I guess.
But I have to have a bite plan.
And what's your bite plan?
Go to the hospital.
So depending on this, and I have to know because I know they tell you whatever you do not tourniquet, do not do any of these things to restrict blood flow because venom in one area might be fine for like a 200-pound man, but if you like locate it to the size of a rabbit, like your hand, all that the venom can't go. So for short term, would a tourniquet be okay?
Not really. Venom doesn't spread like a lot of people think. It's not gonna. It spreads through your tissue before it hits your bloodstream.
Yeah, that's
kind of like if you get a shot or something like that. It's the same concept. Unless you're getting a shot directly into your vein, it's not going to spread through your whole body that fast. Your body kind of like absorbs it like a sponge.
It's amazing how fast those things, like drugs, can go in your through. I know this is really off topic, but
yeah, it is.
When I went to the hospital for my foot the first time, they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna give you Dilaudid, which is morphine's bigger brother, and a bunch of other things." Well, I used to be a combat medic, so I kind of know the drill with this stuff. And normally, Dilaudid is like a little bit, you wait, a little bit, you wait. Well, I had this line in me, and there was a saline flush. I had no idea, and they're just like flushing the saline in me, and I'm like,
I feel nothing.
I can taste colors. Like I actually said that.
Jeez.
It hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like,
I'm sure.
Huh. Yeah, it took 2 seconds.
Yeah, well, like so you said, you put it directly in the bloodstream. That's what happens.
Yeah, I was wondering if like snakes was like that too.
I don't. No, I mean not really. It's like most of these bite kits are bullcrap. You can't suck the venom out. You can't do nothing like that. The only thing you can do is hospital and a venom.
What we were told is to try to keep the person down and lower their heart rate as much as possible so it doesn't spread.
I was always told to remain calm as best as possible.
Yeah. Yes. That's true because it does come to the point where it will enter the bloodstream once your body absorbs enough of it. But
still pretty crazy.
All these
this is good fishing tips too, because you never know.
Because like all those suction cup things and stuff like that, the bite kits with the little knives to cut it and all that stuff, that's bullcrap.
Yeah,
that don't work.
And if you try to suck it out,
already as soon as you're injected, your body is already absorbing that venom.
Right.
So the best treatment in this day and age, unlike 100 years ago, chop off the limb. It's Sam looks down. is getting antivenom, and one vial of antivenom is $100,000.
Wow.
So don't get bit.
Monty, it's a good question. Monty's like, how the heck do you stay calm when you know you just got bit by a venomous snake? That is a good question. It's probably the same way they expect you to be calm when you get stuck in a car wreck and something went through your body. They want you to be calm. It's probably the same logic. But the answer to your question is I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, you gotta hope and pray. Like normally, a snake gives a warning bite, and then because it takes about a week. And feel free to interject if I'm wrong with this, Zach. But it takes about a week for a snake to build up their venom glands. So, in nature, they use that to hunt. So they don't really want to blow their load on. And part of my phrasing there, for a defensive bite.
Yeah, because that's not what that venom's meant for. That venom is meant to kill their prey.
Yeah.
Right.
That venom's meant for them to survive. If they use that venom on you, they cannot use it on food. They don't want to give you a bite and inject venom because that's wasteful.
Alrighty. Well, bringing it back to fishing, stream fishing. All right. Be careful for snakes. Yes, you're going to be going to these bodies of water. If you're going to be walking in, be careful for all critters, angry beavers, angry otters, badgers, skunks, everything. I mean, they all have to get water at some point.
I don't like beavers.
You're fishing these smaller, more remote bodies of water. You're going to experience that stuff and see those things. So be careful with that.
Zach,
And obviously,
Sam's cook a beaver.
But Sam's talking about, actually going and wading these rivers and creeks and stuff. Zach does a little bit different. A lot of the land in Alabama is not state property, so you're not allowed to walk it. What you end up doing a lot for creeks is fishing from bridges.
Bridges, or you have to be in the creek because the creek itself is state property. Once you hit land, it is not.
So yes, and it's weird. I know that it varies from state to state a little bit. But if you're actually standing in the creek, it's illegal. You're still trespassing because you're touching the land on the bottom. If you're in a boat floating in water, it's legal.
Yeah, that's so I can go put in my kayak on public property and go through as many private properties as I want to, as long as I'm on my kayak, as long as my feet do not touch the river bottom.
The only exception to that rule, and again, it depends on where you're at in the country. If a waterway is labeled non-traversable, then even if you're on your kayak, you can still get a ticket for trespassing.
I don't think we have any
non-navigable. Sorry, not it's not navigable is the word. As long as the body of water is labeled navigable, you're fine. If it's labeled non-navigable, then you can still get in trouble for being on a kayak in a creek.
Which I don't think we have any water like that around here, around me.
Well, I have no idea, but you see a lot of people get in trouble for it on YouTube and stuff. Just something to keep in mind for those who aren't familiar with that. It is a thing and it goes back to the whole golden rule of knowing where you're fishing, knowing your rules, knowing your regulations.
So, stupid question. If I'm a landowner and I have a creek going through my backyard, I don't want people going in this creek. Can I cut a tree to go over the creek?
I do not know.
Like if you own both sides of the creek.
If you own both sides of the creek, then nobody can stand on the land to fish it. If that waterway is still labeled traversable, they can be in a boat and floating. But I don't know if you cutting a log over it is an issue or not. Because if it's labeled traversable, that means that they can traverse it, which means they, in theory, should be able to climb over that tree if they needed to get to the other side of it.
So you hire beavers.
Maybe. Monty, take it easy. Thanks for stopping in, man. He said that have a good day. Enjoy and God bless. He's heading out of here. So, yeah. So it is my understanding that as long as it's labeled traversable, it does not matter what you do to that body of water, they're allowed to be there. They just cannot be staying on your land.
Well, yeah, but that's what I mean. Like the tree would be touching both points of your land, and you can't get under the tree.
But there's also nothing saying they can't cut the tree away either. I have seen people do that. They'll take like a portable, like one of those just the actual like chainsaws, you know. You be able to cut
Oh.
stuff through it. That way they weren't breaking the law. Because obviously the alternative is to get out and move your kayak around it or your canoe around it. But yeah. But now you got over this whole legal mumbo jumbo too. Maybe we really are just nailing these rabbit hole off topics tonight, man. When it comes to creek fishing, like I said, Zach fishes more from bridges because it's where you can fish from them. He does a lot more creek fishing for bait than anything else. Creek chubs, bluegills, sunfish, pumpkin seeds, hybrids, all that stuff because he does a lot of catfishing. Whereas Sam being up north, you got more trout, more steelhead, suckers, stuff like that. More of those cold water species that prefer the water.
Yeah, brook
moving water.
trout's huge in the creeks over here.
Oh yeah. So, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. What in those situations, what special gear you use? I know, like I said, Zach's using more of like a lighter and ultralight because he's fishing for bait. But if you know you have some of these harder fighting fish, you touched on more of what gear you use for that.
So always braid because it floats. I rarely use sinkers. If I do, they're very light, like split shots. Flies are always my go-to just because brook trout, they love them, and when I'm creek fishing, that's normally the fish I'm targeting because for small fish. If you catch a 2-pound brook trout, that's a decent sized brookie,
Right.
and they will take you all over that water. I normally run about 4 to 6 pound tests. Hence why it was actually the same pole that I use for brook trout and creek fishing was the one that I caught the carp on that I told you about the last hour.
Nice.
Yep. And that thing stretched my line where I could just go and it would break. I have no idea how I got it to the shore, but
very carefully.
Yeah. So I run 6 pound test on it. Braid with probably only about a 4-foot lead, so not a very big lead line at all. Anything that floats. Sometimes I'll get bored and try to catch perch. And I'll throw like a leaf worm on, so like you're looking at a worm about like yay big. In the springtime, walleye, they creeks. They're pretty active in there. Creeks where kind of turns into a creek to a river, like when it's starting to pick up steam. As far as the current goes, I'll target those, and I just use a shiner. And for those who don't know, well, I'm pretty sure everybody here knows, but for the ones that don't, a walleye is essentially just a larger perch. It's actually the largest fish in the perch family, and honestly, it's probably the best tasting fish up here.
But it's definitely arguable. That is one of the top species of fish for eating in the United States for sure.
Like, people love salmon up here, but I'm like, man, walleye's where it's at. You can broil it, you can fry it, like it is delicious.
Have walleye wings because you can just fry the fins up and eat them.
I haven't done that with walleye. I've done it with bluegill and like sunfish, pumpkin seed, crappie.
I think you can't do. You can't. I mean, you could do it with the tails. I guess it'd be really, really hard to chew. But yeah, if you do, there's that chunk of meat on their belly where their pectoral fins are.
Okay.
And people fry those. There's lots of videos on YouTube of that, but those look good. I've never actually eaten one, but I would eat it. But they say they eat it just like a chicken wing.
Dude, you need to come up here this spring. Like, what are you doing next month?
What's next month? April. I'll be in Florida fishing.
Hey,
Florida.
Jeff Beal makes a good point. To the mouth of a creek is a great place to target all kinds of species.
Oh yeah,
it's straight up a fact. But yeah,
sorry.
Lighter line. No, you're good. I was just touching on what you said. So braid because it floats, which for people that don't know, it does float. Same with mono. Mono tends to float more than like fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon sinks like a brick. But yeah, so you definitely want to use braid. He's using a lighter line because a lot of the species he's catching, generally speaking, are smaller. But he's also throwing light baits like flies.
Yeah, and the straighter the creek is, the better, because I'll just sit in one spot and I'll just open up my bail and you can see like when you have a fish on.
fertile.
Yeah. Then I'm like, oh, I guess I should probably check this, or yeah.
Which that brings it to the next point. When it comes to like reading the water, is there, other than straightaways, is there other types of cover or current breaks that you're looking for that you tend to like target like more favorably than others?
So I mean, obviously you have your holes and like the side of like the bushes and the trees and stuff like that, because the current's gonna make little natural beds for larger fish. And like I told you, that 7-pound steelhead that I caught on a dock demon. So I try to bring it in that way, but if it's like a newer area or it's an area I haven't fished in a while, I'm just gonna there's this one spot I can think of. It's literally 100 yards. Like I could bail out my own spool if I wanted to, and
Jeez.
and it takes you all through these swirls like just naturally. It is awesome, and I know basically if I go through this and it takes about 6 minutes, it's not very fast. If I go through like 3 or 4 times in this spot and nothing's biting,
There's no fish.
there's no fish there.
I got you.
Just because I just naturally do the current, and anything that swirls, any debris, although that can be really tricky when you're running light line, because
Sure.
fish are naturally just going to be like, nope, I'm going.
End of the thing.
Yeah. So
I got you, man. Well, and then Zach, like I said, I know you do creek fish too. You typically do a different approach, though. I know this from fishing with you. You typically do a heavier weight, and you pretty much fish straight down off these bridges.
Yeah, because I mean that's my structure.
Is it the pylon specifically, or is it because the bridge holds a tree, or what?
It depends on if there is a tree there or not. If there's a tree there, then I'm targeting the edge of that tree. I'm dropping that bait right beside that tree. If it's no tree there and there's a pylon, then I want to let that bait run down that pylon, because that's a focal point for some of them fish. They push that bait to that pylon just so they can catch it easier.
I got you. Let's see. You kind of touched on this, the idea of understanding the drift. So in your case, like you said, you're using the lighter line, letting it do the slack do its thing to roll down with it. In Zach's case, he's not really drifting so much; he's just taking advantage of the current to put fish on a certain spot, and he's target fishing.
Yeah,
rather than covering water. So it's not quite drifting; it's a little bit different. But let's see what else I was gonna say. What are
everybody knows me as a cat fisherman, but I can fish for other things too.
Right. In terms of other outside factors that affect drift fishing, you obviously the current speed is going to be a thing. Obviously, the bait choice is going to be a thing. Your equipment is going to be a thing. But what are some other factors that really make a difference in terms of either success or with targeting certain areas?
Temperature and weather. Because if the wind is blowing towards you and you're trying to drift, it slacks up your line. It gets knotted up all the time. So there's some spots, like even if I know there's fish, if the weather and the wind isn't cooperating with me, I'll just avoid it because it's not enjoyable for me. Creeks always better, at least up here. In my experience, always better when it's cold. So like
when the water's cold or the weather's cold?
Yes.
Okay.
So both. We used to do like a steelhead camp downstate, and we would be going like having waders on when there's 2-3 inches of snow still, which was, like I said before,
cold.
It's cold. It was a great miserable time. It was more uncomfortable than ice fishing, because at least ice fishing you have the convenience of a heater if you want.
It's oxymoron.
Yeah. I remember like
Nice.
just starting like fires because like our hands are purple and we can't tie our lines, like that
Yeah.
kind. Yeah.
I got you.
But yeah, so trout, like especially trout, brook trout, they are so much more active in the creeks and the streams when there's just snow on the ground and it's miserable. If it's miserable outside for you, they're happy. They're going to be biting.
I got you.
So not a fish I want to go try to catch on the regular though.
No, you say that, and then when you catch one, and it's like all of that hard work and misery pays off, especially if you get one in the first half hour. It's like, yeah, it's gonna be a good day, and then you normally don't catch.
You don't catch anything else. The rest of
But
one fish in 30 minutes and nothing else. Man, that
it's just like a shot of adrenaline, though. Like it's like that.
yeah,
like being
What was it
16
you
and
guys called
taking
it?
a
What-
drink of
what was the-
Fireball or something like
what was the big brother of morphine?
Dilaudid. That stuff.
His colors. I caught a
Man,
fish. His colors.
that stuff is not fun. So after my amputation, that's what they had me on, and I didn't know exactly how to take this drug because I had to set alarms for pain like every 3 hours. Didn't matter if I was awake or not, and I slept through my alarm, and I ended up in ER. Like I had to take it like religiously every 3 hours,
Because of the
and I like
withdrawals.
no, just because the pain kept up.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
I was on Dilaudid for a month because I wanted off it as soon as possible. And they're like, yeah, no, just take it every 6 hours. I'm like, no. I told them yes, but I'm like, no, I quit cold turkey. And you know me, I'm not an emotional guy generally. Like I'm always fun, go lucky, happy.
You cried. Please tell me you cried.
I cry for 2 weeks straight.
Oh,
I'm like my wife went down to make me a sandwich. I cried for like she was gone for more than 30 seconds. I cried. She was talking to her mom on the phone downstairs. I got my crutches and like hobbled down there. I was not supposed to do that. But, like it was so bad. Like that stuff is no joke. Like I hate
it. Makes you emotional.
I wasn't emotional before. I was just playing Far Cry because I couldn't bring my PC. To my bed. So, PS4. I was just having fun, like, I wasn't having fun because, I just had my foot cut off. But I'm eating ice cream. I'm like, I have a Diet Mountain Dew here. I have ice cream here. I have my game system here. And my puppy's right next to me. I'm like, I mean,
life is great.
This is a sucky situation, but this part's great. And then, like, I took myself off that drug without my doctor's permission. And I was not having a good time anymore. Like
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Your body's trying to readjust on how to act without it.
Yeah, it's like they
trying
actually
to
know what they're
stabilize
talking
itself.
about. Like, yeah, so do what your doctor tells you to do.
It was at that point you understood what it was like to lose a big fish.
It wasn't that bad.
When are you going to understand that?
Shut up, Zach.
Anthony. I got your back, Sam. I got your back.
No, to be fair though, like you guys are like in the land of monsters down there compared to me up here. So I mean, you probably caught bigger fish than I have.
My biggest fish is 35 pounds.
All right, never mind.
Exactly.
Are we counting saltwater or no?
I am.
No, I am not.
I am.
My biggest fish is like a 7-foot shark.
If anybody has caught a fish in saltwater, they beat my record. My the biggest fish caught in saltwater was about the size of this right here.
Dude, I didn't even know they made those anymore. Never mind. I'm like surrounded by DVDs.
I'd say you're showing your age, Sam.
Well, yeah, I'm not kidding. Like I am surrounded by DVDs. Like all of these all around are DVDs. I have a problem.
So let's talk. We've been talking a lot about trout and stuff like that, and other cold water species, I guess you should say.
Yeah.
And yes, obviously we talk about how they're better to catch in the colder weather, colder water. But you can catch them in warmer water. But what do you want to kind of explain some, I guess, concerns in terms of fish handling that people need to be aware of when it comes to catching those species in warmer water?
So they're very, very tender. Like they're not made for warmer water. The best way I can describe it, where brook trout, like I love brook trout, but and I've eaten one in July, like from lake to pan, or well, the stream to pan, and it was essentially mush when I skinned it out. And I've skinned out hundreds of fish before, and now I'm mostly a catch and release fisherman, but I've been fishing for like 34 years at this point. So I know my way around a fillet knife, but you just couldn't. Like their flesh is so tender and their skin is they're fragile. So make sure treat them with kid gloves. Like just don't manhandle them. Don't throw them on the banks. Use there's special nets for trout fishing. They're normally about like yay big and kind of egg shaped. That's the best way I can describe it. When you go to set the hook, because I mean, walleye and stuff like there's other species there. Just trout tend to, they're hungry too. Just don't full send. Just because you don't really need to reef on it sometimes. Like don't go overkill, I guess you could say, because you'll just rip their lips off.
Well, one of the things I was referring to you haven't mentioned yet is in terms of reviving a fish. One of the advantages to
getting there.
One of the advantages of moving water is obviously if you have a fish that's meant for colder water, they're going to take longer to revive. But one of the best things you can do is just hold their head upstream.
And let the water through their gills.
Right. There's a common misconception that if you take a fish and you shake it back and forth under the water, it's going to get more oxygen in its gills. Well, no, because it really can only get oxygen while it's going forward. Water going backwards on the gills doesn't really absorb as easy.
Yeah.
So if you're not in moving water, you're better off holding it still and letting it flare its gills out itself, or walking with it and pushing it forward that way. But in a river, you just hold its head upstream and it's going to get water flow. And if you hold it facing downstream, it's not going to get any air.
Yeah.
That's what I was referring to. Whether you're getting there or not, sorry.
No, I was going to get that. That's what I was going to end on. It just, a lot of people don't really realize how fragile. And I'm just thinking brook trout because I'm just thinking about that right now. Yeah. I haven't been there in like 4 or 5 years. No, shoot. Probably 8 years. So I really want to go there this summer.
Right.
It's a couple hour drive for me right now, but.
And people do it in saltwater too. I know when people are like catching rooster fish and tuna and some stuff like that, if they're releasing it, they'll literally take it up in the air and they'll throw it in the water as hard as they can so it moves fast to get a ton of air in a hurry.
So when I did charter down there, we caught a tuna in the charter. It was a bonita, so we didn't end up keeping it. And I asked him why he did that. He's like, for sharks. I'm not sure if he was kidding with me or not, because we did get sharked up there, or if it was because of the air. Like that makes more sense because a shark is a shark. I don't think a little.
Which that could be one of those things that's taught and not explained completely.
Yeah, that's true. Chrissy, you have a blessed night too.
See, a lot of people get on to me for doing that to catfish. Like the smaller cats, if say like I'm not where I can just place them in the water, I make sure they go in head first. That way, make sure it's deep enough. I don't want them smashing their face on the bottom.
Right. We also don't want to like make them slap on the water. It's like people that throw their bluegills out there and they land like a pancake and all of a sudden they're floating. I mean, you can put a fish through a lot of shock for no reason. But yeah, no, I know a lot of. I don't know them personally. I've seen a lot of saltwater guys release fish that way, and I've seen people do it with salmon. I've seen people do it with steelhead and stuff too, out in the lake, just to give them a quick surge of air. But then they do it and then they watch them and see if they swim off or if they float. Because if they float back up, you got to do it again.
So in my situation, like if I fish lock 6, that's a 4-foot drop from the top of the lock or from the top of the dock to the water.
Right.
I can't reach down that distance. So instead of just letting them flop and hit the side of the water, my best thing to do was drop them head first.
Yep. No, I agree with you that 100%. And like you said, it may be a thing that's taught but not explained. But it's, as far as I know, that's the way to do it. And as for the whole sharks thing, I can see that being a possible thing too.
Yeah, me too.
You want
Being
the
a
fish
shark fisherman as well, I've just bait fishing for sharks. I've had blue runners come back that I had caught that were just half a blue runner.
right.
Yeah.
So
Well-
imagine that fish when it's dazed after it's been caught being released. It might need that little bit of help to get away.
Right.
And
Because them sharks are fast and they're predators.
oh yeah, and so down in the Keys, there's sharks are kind of trained to follow fishing boats because there's one shark that I can think of. He's an 18-foot great white, or not great white, hammerhead, and we accidentally ran into him. I haven't had the hiccup since. But his name is like Big Mo, and we were fishing under a 7 Mile bridge and 7-8 feet of water. And we caught our limit and yellow snapper in like half an hour, and then just no fish whatsoever. I'm like, huh, that's weird. And we pull up the chum bag, and as I'm pulling up the anchor, I just see this giant shadow, and you can recognize that head. And we saw his dorsal fin. His dorsal fin's like 5 foot out of the water. I'm like, I'm not grabbing that anchor. This is how horror movies start.
Exactly.
See, that's my dream. That's one of my bucket list sharks, a greater hammerhead. So I'd be like, I want to catch it.
Oh no, it'd be fun to hook into, but we went and we got fuel, and like, yeah, we saw this giant shark, and the guy's, he's a local, and actually, I think he was the owner. Like, either way, he's worked at this place for 20 years. He's like, oh, that's Big Mo. He never leaves. He just follows fishing boats. That's what most of the hammerheads and bull sharks around here do. They just follow fishing boats. And we're like, oh,
great.
That's lovely.
Unlike me, where I shark fish at, I wade out waist deep with no weight on the line, and I just cast out and stand out there and wait. You get bumped by sharks, all kinds of stuff. My son went out there with me last year. He got bumped on the leg by a shark, just nose bumped. He's like, I want to go back. I don't want to be out here.
I can't afford that. I'm on my last leg here, buddy.
Literally. Oh,
it's like, how'd you lose your legs? Like, well, one a stupid 10, the other one a shark. Like, yeah, that story's made up.
Yeah, right. Oh man,
I did have people believing like there was bull sharks in Lake Michigan this past summer. Like,
you would do that.
I don't mind if people ask, but it's just drunk people that I want. All right, so we have a carnival in downtown. Like, they closed downtown. They have elephant ears. I don't know if you know this.
I love elephant ears. I miss elephant
too. I avoid the carnival. I parked my car in a local grocery store. I walked across the street. I grabbed my elephant ear. In my line, or like while I'm in line, this guy's like, "How'd you lose your leg?" And he's just like, "If you're gonna drink, that's fine. But if you're gonna be like one of those drunk, annoying people, I don't like you." And I was like, bull shark, Lake Michigan. And by now my elephant ear's out. So I just walked away. And the guys and his family's just like, we're not swimming tomorrow.
What's an elephant ear?
Okay, so you have funnel cakes. Up north has elephant ears.
Okay.
Funnel cakes are the thing with all the strings, right? Where they just take the dough and they keep stringing over and over again. An elephant ear, the dough is a little bit runnier to start with, and it's like a pancake, but it's deep fried, and it's literally it's huge.
Yeah, it's like this big. It's like overflowing on the plate. The butter, cinnamon, sugar.
Yep, butter, cinnamon, sugar is usually the main way to get it. I have seen people put fruit on them.
That's
funnel cakes do just powdered sugar. So.
Ooh, that sounds like it'd be really good with that cream cheese cheesecake spread.
So I had Bavarian cream on it on one this past October at a haunted house. Oh my god, dude! Like,
y'all make me hungry.
It was one of those things where it's like,
you make me hungry.
It's like, if the diabetes,
I'm always hungry.
The heart attack is like,
right. No kidding. But yeah, all right. Let's see what else here. We covered that. We covered that. We covered that.
Wait, do you have any experience creek fishing?
Good experiences or bad experiences or both?
Yes, both.
Okay, so I used to live on over in Polk County, Tennessee. Our neighbor owned property on the Conasauga River, which it was called a river, but it was really a creek. Went down there, and there was one branch that would branch off at the bottom where the property met. And I distinctly remember walking in there, taking a right, going up the creek a little bit. And there was one, most of that water at that point was like a foot or less. But there was one hole that was like 6 feet deep. And around 2 in the afternoonish, the sun would hit that just right, and that pool, it would go from a green up to a tan, as it went from deep to the shallow. And I kid you not, it looked like it's something you see in an aquarium. Like it was just so many different species of fish, every single color you can think of, all that good stuff. But I remember sitting there looking at that and almost getting run over by a deer that was running away from a coyote. That's my weird memory. All right.
You could have your surf and turf right there, man.
Yeah, right? Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, no, I'm sitting there staring at these fish, and all of a sudden, this big old deer comes out of the woods. I say big old deer. We're in Tennessee; they're not that big, but doe comes flying out of the river, and here's a coyote. I don't know if it was a coyote, if it was a stray dog, whatever it was something. But I heard it barking, growling, whatever after it, and yeah, it was as fast as it was there, as fast as it was gone too. It was absolutely nuts. And then, in terms of back to the snake topic, I did see a couple of water moccasins down there. One that scared me because I didn't see it. It didn't make any signs, didn't move. It might have even been dead. I'm not sure. The other one swam at me, and I shoved it away with a fishing rod. That was probably as calm as I've ever been around a snake.
That's why
in
you
terms-
carry. Like I would be the redneck out there with the cordless
pistol.
hole punch, just laying hate at this snake.
Yeah.
Like,
Get away! Yeah,
don't make
no,
me do this.
right?
I can't afford ammo prices right now.
I'm more scared of you than you are of me. Yeah,
No,
but
no.
but that same creek, I found gold in that creek. I've caught catfish in that creek. Nothing huge, but I've caught catfish. That was the first time I ever caught fish on Spam. Was in that creek too. I caught catfish and I caught turtles on Spam. But one of the biggest things about creek fishing is how I'm from Michigan originally. You and I know how clear that water is up there. It could be like glass. You can see 10, 12, 14 feet deep sometimes or deeper.
Oh, you should go out on the ice, dude. You can see 40 feet.
I believe it.
Like it's just glass. Like it's scary.
But like at the same time, down here, if you get 6 foot water clarity, that's a good day. That's
That's
clear.
amazing. What you
Right.
talking about?
Right. So I'm fishing. I remember this creek specifically, or just all creeks in general, especially up towards the mountains more. The water was always clear. But actually, at this point, I had never caught a carp and I had never caught a sucker. But I just remember that creek was always full of them. I never knew what to throw at them. I threw lures. I threw worms, but I didn't know how to drift. I didn't know how to drift fish. I was so used to just fishing lakes with a bobber. That's the only way I knew how to do it, And at that point in time, I had so many missed opportunities. If I knew how to drift fish, I guarantee I'd caught a lot more fish. I definitely caught a lot of bigger fish too, because there was definitely some big ones in there. But
See, I don't know. I don't know how to catch suckers, and we have them here, and I have no clue how to catch them.
So the biggest thing I've learned about suckers at this point, you want to bottom bounce as much as possible. You want them to keep as close to the bottom, and either you want it pegged there and let them do their thing, or like I said, you want to slow roll it where you bounce it and it's just barely creeping along the bottom, because they like to be in the middle of the current rather than in the slack water, like most species. That's my experience.
Whenever I go just target suckers, I don't know if you guys have them there, but they're called water worms. It's literally, it's a worm that just lives in water.
I don't know if I am or not.
Yeah, dude, you can catch 10 an hour. I'm not even. They're amazing. When the
Can you
suckers
have
are
those shipped? I need some of those shipped to me.
Most people I know that catch suckers around here, and they regularly use like a red worm and a piece of corn on like a size 12 hook.
Yeah, red worms are a new thing, like up here. Like when the last 2
Yeah,
years.
that's a good point because when I lived there, I remember specifically it was night crawlers, leeches, and waxworms. Those were the 3 things that were available.
Dude, I love
That
leech. That carp that I told you about
was on a leech.
was on a leech.
I believe that. I do.
It was like because I hate baiting my hook. Like I love chatterbaits. I love swim baits. Like that's my thing. I don't have to bait my hook. That's annoying. I'm lazy. I don't want to do that. But leeches are leathery. So I had like this half mangled leech. It's just, I should have rebaited a long time ago. No, I threw him out there. And next thing you know, I just don't go to set the hook and just zzz. I was like,
yeah.
Oh no. That's all I said.
What have I done?
I was like, and I just said, like, I told my parents, like, yeah, I'm not getting in this water today. And as soon as that drag was going, I was like kicking my shoes off, getting everything out of my pockets because I already knew, like, this thing was.
I'm having to go swimming to get this thing.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Well, with that being said, guys and gals, if you're still here watching, we do appreciate you. The first hour of tonight, we were talking about springtime carp fishing. Second hour, we were talking about drift fishing creeks, rivers, and streams. It is definitely a technique that everybody should learn how to do. It's definitely cost me chances when I didn't know how to do it. I should learn it a lot sooner in life.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the resources available now, like when you were a kid, it was basically what we were taught by our parents. So if our parents didn't know, they just made stuff up because they didn't really want to seem stupid. But when I went to
either that or you bought a magazine and read an article.
Yeah, like how am I supposed to? There's no pictures.
Right.
But,
so yeah, I mean, it's definitely come a long way in terms of information. But even then, that's another whole point of this podcast and the show and whatnot is to help cut the learning curve for you guys and bring awareness to that stuff and hopefully teach you guys something new.
Let our mistakes be your success.
Exactly. But with that being said, I do have a couple of announcements. We did do our 500 1,000 giveaway for the Extra Outdoors Fishing Channel. Fish Sizzle, aka Brandon Hudson, won the rod. If you guys competed in that giveaway and won something but did not send me your email address, make sure you reach out and let me know so we can get it sent out to you. I think we're missing a person or two. I can't remember if we got them all or not. On top of that, the next episode is going to be on March 23rd of 2024, where we talk about springtime bass fishing. And we're also going to have a special guest, which is Modog Fishing, or Fishing with Modog, rather. His name is Tim. He's a big-time tournament bass fisherman out in Oklahoma. And chatterbaits are his absolute favorite bait to throw. So we're going to have him up here talking about chatterbaits and techniques and maybe hopefully get some stuff out there that we might know, but maybe get a different opinions, maybe some stuff that we don't know for you guys. So make sure you stay tuned for that. That'll be in 2 weeks on March 23rd of 2024.
My name is list like this long to ask him questions, by the way.
I'm going to. And that's fine. I'm sure it'll make his life a lot easier.
All right.
Hillbilly Hondo, yeah, you guys too. Like I said, we appreciate you guys. I'm Anthony with the Extra Outdoors. This is Sam with Sam's Amputee Adventures.
And I'm your conscience.
Zach Viking is on here too. We appreciate you guys. We will see you guys again next time. And until then, tight lines, everybody.